Welcome to one of the sessions for International Women's Day. We're GDG Cloud Edmonton. We are located in Edmonton, in Canada. And this is one of the sessions, part of multiple sessions for this International Women's Day. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are already also registered for the hackathon. So I'm excited to see what everybody comes up on Monday. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So welcome. And so, just a bit of code of conduct that we need to discuss. We're committed to providing a friendly, safe, and welcoming environment for all, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, ability, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status, and also religion. We want to ensure that everybody participates in an authentic and active way. In doing so, you contribute to the health and longevity of the community. And please exercise consideration and respect in your speeches and actions, and try attempting collaboration before a conflict. Refrain from demeaning, discriminatory, and harassing behavior in speech, and please be mindful of your fellow participants. Everybody's here to learn. So we are an official chapter of Google's worldwide network of cloud enthusiasts, developers, data scientists, and engineers. And finally, we would also like to acknowledge that we are based on traditional lands here in Edmonton, Canada, referred to as Treaty 6 territory. Our traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nokora Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands since time immemorial. So, welcome, Keerti. She's a fellow PhD student from Missouri, Kansas City. And I was going over her bio. She has a bachelor's degree from Indian Institute of Technology in Nagpur. And in her free time, she also likes to travel and try out new cuisines, and also likes to meet people from different cultural backgrounds. And so, yeah, I'm gonna let Kirti take away from here. And also, please, if you want to scan this QR code, if you want to be a part of GDG Cloud Edmonton, feel free to scan this QR code. I'm going to leave this on for 15 seconds. And yeah, and Kirti, yeah, take over the stage and tell us about prompt engineering.
Thank you very much. And once this is done, I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Thank you for the introduction, and yeah, I am very excited to meet everyone. As you introduced me, I am a PhD student at UMKC, um, and I have my bachelor's degree from India. And yeah, it's been exciting few couple of years, and I'm so excited to be talking about prompt engineering. My PhD focuses on AI interactions, explainable AI, and a lot of things that go in interacting with artificial intelligence. So let me know when
Sounds
I
good. Yeah,
should
I'm going to
start.
take this down and I'll
Yeah,
let you share your screen.
okay. Let me, hmm, is that visible?
Yep.
Okay, let's get started. This is a question that I like to ask everyone because this is something that most people tell me whenever I'm interacting with them. They go like, "But why is it so frustrating?" So, in your interactions with either GPT or Claude or Gemini, has the responses ever frustrated you? And feel free to interact with me. It's not going to be like I'm going to talk for the entire hour. So, if you have responses, please speak up, speak about them. So, uh, no answers. Okay, I am speaking for the majority that yes, it usually has been. The frustration has come down as the AI models evolved and we are moving towards thinking models. Um, but most people will have experience with trying to have AI talk, but then it's not giving you what you're really looking for. It's doing something which is different and it's not able to understand you. So let's see why is the reason. I want to see if anyone has any guesses or if anyone wants to say anything on why. Okay, let me see chat. Okay, none. Okay, one of the things is AI is trained on millions and millions of articles, especially when we talk about text-based and communicable AI. They're primarily trained on text, speech, data that's widely available. Um, for example, if I'm training one of the models that is seeing a lot of the words that are similar to certain areas, let's say community. So, and that word community is being followed by growth, progression, and everything. So, in the output, wherever it involves communities happening, there is a likelihood that it will talk about growth and progression simultaneously while talking about community. It's the same way. If the data is actually trained on climate change, it is likely that it will talk a lot about global warming, greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide emissions, and whatnot. So there is a lot of technical terminology involved here too. But this session is more about what we can do without having technical background to enhance our interactions with it. So even though AI can generate convincing human-like text, it is very different. Oh, there we go. So one of the primary reasons as to why this happens is because AI models don't think or understand meaningfully. As humans, we associate words with meaning, experience, and emotions. But these models, large language models, they don't really associate things like we do. Um, it knows the meanings of each word based on what it has seen. It's always a probability of each word. It's never really an accurate word. If we look at how as humans evolve into slang languages, like each word has different meanings based on what we are talking, it's hard for AI to do that without having the exact context. Let me give an example. Uh, I'm talking in a friends group where maybe we have an experience related to fire or something. And if I'm using that context in that group, those people will understand. But for someone new, it's hard to understand. So to be able to understand them, they need to experience what has happened in the past and correlate it with that, and which AI usually can do. Let's see. Okay, and these models rely on pattern recognition and probability-based predictions. Um, Whenever there is text, there's always a pattern of how words come after each other based on grammar, based on context. Models learn these patterns and work on the probability of what the next word is based on what we are trying to tell it. It doesn't see words the way humans do. As I said, it doesn't understand the emotion and experience behind words. It just knows what it has widely seen. Um, this is a bit of the technical breakdown of what's really happening with these language models. They break down sentences into tokens, which are small units of text. And these sentences, for example, let's say, I love ice cream, the tokens will become individual words based on the delimiter. In most of our writing, we consider space as something that separates words. And that's how the models are told to, unless my data is stored in a way where I'm using something else instead of that space as my separation between words. And eventually, these tokens will be assigned numbers based on how many times they appear in the document or in the whole database. And these numbers are finally processed to be calculating probability of the next word. Okay, and then it lacks true comprehension. This is again coming back to the first point that I said, that the models don't think or understand. So it's not able to really comprehend what it's trying to say. It's saying what it has seen. It doesn't really know what it is saying. Um, and from the breakdown of sentences into tokens, as those tokens are converted into numbers, then they are also converted into probabilities. For example, when people talk about I like doing something, that's something, if it's a word to be predicted, based on the document it has seen, that something could be traveling, that something could be reading books, that something could be studying, that something could be socializing. It depends on the kind of data the model has seen. Um, when we humans we speak or write, we try to convey our ideas, our emotions, or persuade someone. But AI doesn't have these intentions. All it does is mimics patterns. It's not here to persuade someone into doing something. One of the best examples is if we look at a salesperson, we might see an object and be like, oh, I'm not really interested in buying it. But the salesperson tries to convince us, associating it with what needs we could have and everything else. Unless we explicitly ask these models to be doing that, they don't really intend to do that. And every model's intention is different. Most of these interactions are API based large language models that are accessible to us, such as Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, and everything. These are trained for general purposes. That means you could use that as a base model and further tune it to your particular use case. For example, I could take OpenAI API and I could train my own conversational model that could act as my therapist. So every use case differs for these models. This is a quick question again. Feel free to please answer them. Do you think that AI can truly be controlled to respond what we desire, to be very precise? Any responses? Okay, so yeah. Okay, I see a hand raised. I think they can improve. Yes.
I think yes, like if we give it the right prompt.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a good answer, and what exactly we're talking about. Uh, it won't be exact. We cannot explicitly entirely control the way it responds, but we can strongly influence its responses with the right techniques. Um, LLMs use a lot of settings to prevent robotic responses. If we look at the history of how GPT models have evolved, initially you could any person could easily tell that this was not written by a human. This was some machine generated text because it used to be very strict on grammar, not using things that are mostly used in spoken languages. And when humans speak, we don't explicitly speak grammatically correct phrases. We speak and then we keep building that statement based on what we are trying to convey. But when LLMs produce, in the past, they have not really been doing that because they have only seen texts that are strictly professionally written books or something. So eventually, we have induced some randomness settings in these to be able to make it sound more like humans. If you're using APIs to build something else, and if you're prompting um, as coding and using that API, you can use some settings such as temperature to adjust how random you want these values to be. And one of the techniques that goes into the prediction is top P sampling or top K sampling. It controls how many possible words AI considers before choosing one. Let's talk about the example that I gave before that I love doing something. And if it's predicting something, it has a list of words and it chooses the one with top probability. And how narrow that list is depends on how much sampling you're doing. If I don't consider a lot of options, then it is possible that I might not be able to give the correct answer. So it's also important to consider as much variety of text as possible. for us to generalize it even further. So, yeah, I mean, short answer to this is we cannot completely control it, but we can strongly influence it to be very precise to what we are desiring to be uh, really. And now the question is how? There are various ways, but anyone wants to talk about what are the ways we can influence these interactions? Okay, by providing examples. Yes, that's definitely one way. Yes.
Also providing roles.
Uh-huh. That's a good, yeah, that's a very good answer. So these are the ways when we use our side of interaction to influence the output. But one of the more common ways is fine tuning the model for specialized data. As I mentioned earlier, LLMs are trained on vast data, and I could just pick that generalized model and train it more on the therapy conversations people are having. I'll make sure that we limit any personal identifiable information before we train it. But if it is seeing more of the data that is conversations between a therapist and the client, then I can easily train it to be more empathetic towards people, more understanding, and be able to listen to people. Um, what are the issues when we are doing this? Um, One of the things is it's inaccessible or impractical for many users. Not everyone that is accessing AI in the models are professionals who have the ability to be able to do this. And it has very high computational cost, and not everyone has resources. Often, the data that is required for training these models and the time required for training these models without having a GPU or a TPU is very high. It could take days, weeks, and months sometimes. And not everyone has very highly computational and very advanced GPUs. And it would also require knowing technical expertise, having technical expertise in the field. And it is a bit complex. This is something you could do if you are trying to build a product, but not if you're just someone who's coming to AI to talk and understand, um, refine your ideas and refine your interactions. And time constraint, as I said, fine tuning takes days sometimes and months. So not everyone is willing to put that time into it. But if you have that time, then by all means, you can fine tune the model for yourself. And the second option is well structured and detailed prompts. That's what our providing examples, asking it to be in a role is more about. A good thing is it doesn't require any additional cost, or it doesn't require you to be an expert in the field. And the second, it's very immediate. That means you don't really have to wait for days or anything to be able to see the results. Any questions so far?
There was one question in
Okay.
the Q&A
Hmm.
section. So this person's asking, would prompt engineering be required for interaction or using an AI agent?
I would say it depends, honestly, because what is accessible widely is general models. If you're talking to an agent that is very specific to a certain task, for example, a banking website has an agent that answers your questions related to their their bank and what their guidelines are and how they do things, then you won't really have to prompt it in a specific way. These are the generalized actions when you're trying to interact on your personal level with something. Does that answer the question?
I think that's a good answer.
Okay. And just to build on that too, when talk about specific agents, they're already fine-tuned. They have gone through the process of fine-tuning on the data set that suits their needs. So it's able to better answer accordingly as compared to general models. Um, any more questions?
I
Oh,
think we're good for now.
okay, we'll move forward. So what exactly is prompt engineering? Prompt engineering basically be able to design effective prompts to enhance our interactions with AI and have better responses from it. Why is it important? Because it enhances accuracy and relevance to what we are looking for, reduces ambiguity in the way AI responds to us. It saves us a lot of time by generating better results in fewer attempts. Um, it also helps AI tailor outputs for our specific use cases. Um, and most importantly, it saves frustration. You don't have to like go over and over or try something new with it. Um, in this section, we'll talk about a few techniques that are used in prompt engineering. I am not saying that these are the only techniques used, but these are a few that are really common and popular. One of them is a few short learning. Um, I will go through what exactly these are in the future slides, but here I'm just naming them. The second is chain of thought prompting. This is something that really works for me. I like using chain of thought prompting a lot because I try to make it think logically by giving it steps. Role playing, as someone mentioned, you can always ask your AI or your model to act as someone and prompt it. Iterative refinement is basically going back on the commands, and negative prompting is letting it know what you don't really want in it. And as I said, these are not limited to these techniques. There are many, many more techniques. Every technique is unique, and you can always tailor them, combine these techniques based on what you're exactly looking for. On the image, this is basically what you need to be able to craft good prompts. A, clarity. B, context. C, be able to provide examples if you really have some. Then D, keywords, and E, tone. Why? This image is the most important thing when you're creating your own prompts. Just don't really think about what are the popular techniques. I really need to master them. No, you need to master how you're able to communicate in a clear way. The key is to be very, very clear, specific, precise, and very, very literal with your model. And why this image is important, because when you're clear and you talk with clarity, it makes the model think very specific and in a direct way. And when you provide context, it provides background and necessary information, so it is able to pull out anything that's related to that context and be able to answer accordingly. And when you provide examples, you're communicating what your expectations are, or how you visualize, or how you think your output is supposed to be like. And when you use certain keywords, it ensures relevance, and tone also makes it more relevant to your use case. Any questions before we go into these techniques? Okay. If there is nothing, then I'll go and start with few short learning. Few short learning is basically able to provide few examples so your model learns how to respond correctly. For example, imagine you're teaching a friend on how to write Instagram captions, but instead of explaining how to write them, you show them a few. One of the examples I might give is rise and grind and just a hashtag. The other example is weekend relaxation mode on and one hashtag. So right now it's seeing a pattern that you don't want the captions to be long, lengthy sentences, and you would like to include one hashtag. So when you are able to show that these are some things you like, when AI is responding, it will keep that in mind and try to write something that is short, catchy, and use that hashtag that you are looking for based on your image context. Why few shot learning is useful? Because it helps the model understand format, style, and structure that you're really expecting in its output. Chain of thought prompting is something that's more relevant with math, logic, and reasoning based tasks, but I'm not saying this can be used for creative writing. It just depends on how the chain of thought is happening for the model. There are two ways of chain of thoughts. One is implicit reasoning. Implicit reasoning is asking your model to explain its output in a step by step way. So, for example, I ask my model, how are you solving an equation, maybe x plus y is equals to z based on some constraints? It gives me an answer, but I ask it to explain me step by step on how it has come to that answer. What happens in this style of prompting is when it's going through step by step, if it is able to see any errors it has made in those steps, it will correct it and it will correct its answer accordingly. And the other one is explicit reasoning. This really works when you have something in your mind, when you have thought of a process and you're trying to let your model do that. So you basically manually specify the steps for the model. And role playing. Role playing is when the model is prompted to act as a specific persona or expertise or behave like someone with the background. For example, you can say that the model, you're a cybersecurity expert, and now explain the importance of multi factor authentication to a non technical audience. So, what you're doing in this prompt is you're letting the model know to gather all the data that it has on cybersecurity and be able to explain it to someone who is not really strong in that background. Let's take someone maybe from the HR department, and they are really wanting to know what your project is about. Um, and if you try to tell them using all technical terms like capture the flag and everything, they won't really know it. So you will have to put it in layman terms for them. And to be able to do that, you need to gather all information that's available on your end and be able to translate it using synonyms for a broader audience. One of these other examples is act as a fitness coach and provide a 7-day beginner workout plan. When you prompt it to act as a fitness coach, it will gather all the information that it has in its scene database based on nutrition, based on workout types, based on meal plan, and it will give you all possible combinations. It will still do it if you just ask it to provide a 7-day beginner workout plan. But when you ask it to be a fitness coach, it will explicitly keep in a mind on the professional advice it could give instead of the general advice, if it makes sense. Iterative refinement is something that we all do most of the times with our interactions. It just has a fancy name. So instead of accepting the first response that our model gives us, we try to follow up with different prompts on, oh, just enhance what you're outputting me with something else. Give me 1 second. I just need some. Any questions so far? If none, let's keep going. So a few examples are, for example, I ask it to give me an essay on maybe my grandfather, and I explain what his personality is like. And then once it gives me an essay, I can ask it to make the response more concise if I want a shorter one, or I can rewrite this in a more professional tone. I don't really want an essay on my grandfather in a professional tone, but maybe let's say I am entering in a competition and I already have something. I can input it that and say, oh, can you rewrite this in more professional tone, if that helps. And If you're trying to explain something to a wider audience, you can add more examples to illustrate what your concept is and what you're trying to convey. Negative prompting, this really comes in handy when you don't want certain things in your response. So you try to explicitly specify undesired behavior, styles, or outputs, and you discourage them in your prompts. For example, summarize the history of machine learning in an objective technical tone, and we are explicitly saying that avoid informal language, oversimplifications, and subjective opinions. So since we're saying to avoid informal language, it could be that maybe I'm using it for a presentation and do not oversimplify the term, which means we are assuming that the model, like our audience, is already expert in the field. So we don't really want to oversimplify it. We want to keep it as detailed as possible. And subjective opinions, I mean, most of the times we try to steer away from opinions when you're putting it really in a public way. Uh, any questions? Okay, someone in the chat said they have a question.
I think somebody has raised
Yeah.
their hand, yeah.
Okay, so my question is on the chain of thought prompting.
Okay.
Isn't that what DeepSeek is doing right now? If you turn on the feature that says Deep Think, because I noticed that when you put on that feature, it sort of thinks about what it wants to do before it gives you the response.
This is what, yes and no, in a way. This is what the models are moving towards. DeepSeek is one of the thinking models. Thinking models are the one that does have implicit chain of thought prompting in them. So what they do is they break down your prompts into individual tasks and execute each one of them in a different way, and then gather them all together to output you, if that makes sense. That's it. Would you want a furthermore overview on it?
No, that's good.
Okay, thank you. Right now, I do have a few like hands-on exercises. These are not really hands-on, but I would give you a few examples and probably, give me a second. Is there such a thing as too many techniques? Should I be using all the techniques? There is no such thing called too many techniques. One thing I always say is do what works for you. For example, I can eventually pull up ChatGPT and show you what I can do to make it give me the desired output. There is there is nothing as using too many techniques. It's trying to prompt whatever you need. For example, I might give my model a math problem and give it a chain of thought prompting to do it a step by step. And then I might ask it to write an essay explaining it. And then I might also say, oh, don't make it like this. Make it more detailed, or don't add too many technical terms in it. Make it more simpler. So it's you trying to refine what output you are expecting from it. So here we are combining negative prompting and iterative refinement. So there is what I mentioned are some things that really are popular when you're communicating with the regular models, but they're not the I won't say they're the standard way of prompting. Most of the times when I talk about the prompting, I always say that you should. Is that here? This image is what I mostly tell people that this is what you should keep in mind. And as long as you're able to incorporate these five points in your prompt, that's what makes it different and that's what makes it clear. Um, if you look at all these examples that we talked about, one thing that we are doing is we are making use of either one of the five or a few of the five or all five things in those prompting techniques. Does it help? And I think there was another question, but I just lost it. But yeah, this is a question that was in the chat that I answered. Does it answer your question?
One of the questions that I often hear about from other people and my peers is they use the phrase few shot learning and few shot prompting
Yeah,
interchangeably.
yeah.
So it's just to be clear that okay, learning, it's not something that the model is actually learning. It's not updating the weights. So
No, it's
the phrases
not.
are interchangeable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Few short learning is it comes from the learning phrase comes because a lot of prompt engineering works when you're working on the API level with the model and not really on our daily interactions. Uh, when I am trying to use the API of the actual foundation model and trying to do something of myself. That's where we are trying to build a new model based on the previous weights, and we are having new weights. So it's not updating the previous weights. That's where the few shot learning comes into picture. But when you're directly interacting with the public access of the version, it's not really updating the weight. But lately, what most of these providers have started doing is they ask you for it, but you can turn it off in the settings. They ask you if it's okay for us to train the model on your data. And if you choose that, then all the inputs that you're giving go into training the model on how to respond. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Uh, if there are no other questions and if I've answered pretty much everything, we can just do this small exercise. It's not really hands-on super exercise, but there are a few things based on what we have talked today. What technique would you use in certain situations? For example, you need help with the academic writing that has some guidelines and tone of writing. Your task is to write a prompt that helps the model produce response according to your need, structure, and tone of writing. So, what technique would you use, or what techniques you would combine in this? I I don't want to say what I would do because I know what I would do. I really want to know if you were able to understand the previous session. So,
One of the things that I do is I just basically invoke the role playing technique. It's like, oh, you're an expert writer,
uh huh.
and then okay, you're an expert scientific researcher, and I already have like a draft ready that
Yeah,
I wrote from by myself, and then I ask it to improve on that writing.
that's a very good way to do it. Anyone else wants to say what they would use? No. Um, you this also answers again the question that was in the chat. Is there anything as too many techniques? You could always combine multiple techniques. Role playing is definitely one of the good things. And then you can also combine it with few shot, give it examples that you would really want your final output to look like. So it can adapt to that tone and conciseness or how you're looking for it. Uh, and maybe you can also add negative prompting on say, oh, try to avoid unprofessional words, try to keep the tone very professional. um, so it's, as I said, again, there's no correct answer to any of these. All the answers are correct. um, and next, let's see the second one. What technique would you use? You want to explain the importance of saving money to two different audiences, a 10-year-old child and a business executive. Your task is to write two prompts to instruct a model to tailor the response for each audience. I can see something is in the chat. how do you get an idea of how to design structure based on needs? Actually, it's a very good question. While people are thinking about the what technique would use, I can answer that really quick. One thing that is key is be able to give in a how LLM's process is from what the first thing you give towards the end. So what are your top priorities should always go first. So if it is important for you that the model behaves certain way or acts in a role, then the first thing you say is act as something. Or how you get to those details is really important and you really want the model to focus on the techniques, then the first thing you do is chain of thought prompting. So what is important to you determines what you give first. Does that help? Okay. And any answers on what technique would you use for these two prompts? Yeah, negative prompting. I like that. Uh, there was a raised hand.
I was actually going to say the same thing, like avoiding jargon to a 10-year-old.
Yeah, that works. And third one is what technique would you use? You want AI to write motivational quote about success, but you don't really want it to use common cliches that never give up, hard work always pays off. We all read it every now and then, but I don't really want to save that as my motivational quote. So write a prompt that ensures that responses avoids those phrases and comes up with something new. Any answers? Ask it to be a philosopher. Cool. I really like that. Negative prompting for sure. Yes, I like it. Give it a bunch of example codes. Yes. I think it's the same task text. Or something similar. I didn't really understand the last one. But yeah, I think I like all the responses and I like how you're thinking on negative prompting too. I could just say don't use commonly used terms and ask it to prompt, or I can give it examples that don't involve such cliches and ask it to give me something similar to that. So, yeah. And any more? Okay. If there's nothing, I would really like us to try something. So let me stop sharing and I'll reshare in just a minute. Okay. Are you able to see this? I just opened Gemini and I'm trying to, let's go with our last example. Um, write some motivational quotes. So you see these responses, and now what we'll do is So, are you able to see? Give me a second. Let me try to pull them up side by side. Okay, there we go. So this is our first prompt where we didn't ask it to do anything, and it has tried to give us some responses. And the other one is when I asked it to avoid using certain things, it has tried to combine something that, oh, so, oh, you're only able to see the previous one. My bad. But when I changed my prompt, it was able to give me something by combining multiple things that it has seen in the past. Let me see. Uh, do you think saying please and thank you makes the models better at giving you the desired response? Yes, because it kind of gives the model the positive reinforcement. So whenever I don't think please really has a difference, but when you say thank you, I have noticed that when you say thank you, it tells the model that you liked what it has responded. So it will try to keep its responses in that particular direction. I'm so sorry that I didn't see your chat earlier. I was just working on the Gemini. And one more thing is this is something that happened when I don't know why I did this, but I asked consider a range of numbers 0 to 499. Tell me how many numbers start with each digit from 0 to 9. So this prompt is still clear, you know? If you tell a human to do this, they will know what they are supposed to do. I don't really know if Gemini retrained their model on this, but let's see how it prompts. Okay, do you see the answer and do you think it's correct? That's correct. Why? Because it's seeing the broader range from 0 to 499, and the first thing it's seeing is 0 to 4. So it just thinks that there is no other number from in between then. So here what you can do is do a chain of thought prompting, maybe. You can do iterative refinement and say, no, that is wrong. Numbers such as 5, 50, 51 start with 5, and so on for numbers 60, 70, 80, and so on. So basically, I'm doing iterative refinement, but giving it some examples. So let's see if it is able to. No, it's not, because it's considering that you have to append everything that starts with 0 as 0. It's still not thinking right. So what I'm going to do is, let me first copy my prompt. Also, whenever I'm trying to give it new, I try to start a new chat because within each conversation, the chat history is retained. So it knows what it has done in the past. And it's really hard for the model to pivot from that. So instead, just start fresh and try to give it new. Or sometimes forget what you have done so far. Such things work. It's not really forgetting, but it's just not keeping that in its cache. Any questions on this? Step 1. Actually, let me add a step 0. I'm asking you to not zero pad any numbers. In step 2, I'm asking you to extract first digit in each number. And step 2, count how many of the numbers extracted in step 1 start with each digit in 0 to 9. And I'm explicitly saying including both. Step 3. Okay, give me a second. I am getting back to questions. So now we did like step by step, and if you see, extract the first digit. First number 0 to 9, it did. So the final second step is it's trying to count how many numbers start with each. And step 3, this is the answer. Do you think that's correct now? So I'm going to answer the questions in the chat. Can speak a little about ChatGPT and its memory. So ChatGPT is something that has been most developed so far from its earlier versions. I mean, this prompt, if I would have prompted it probably a month ago, it would have still responded similar to Gemini. And here I'm only talking about free versions where people have access to, everyone has access to. When you get the higher version of these models, they're more trained, they have seen more data, they have seen more way of prompting, they have been refined on the way they are working. So they perform a little better, and I'm not saying they all do amazing things. And what I am prompting right now are very basic things, and you might not really ask them on your daily basis. All I'm trying to show you with these prompts is how changing the way you prompt changes the responses. So when you say, can I speak a little about ChatGPT? I don't really understand what context you're expecting. But as far as its memory, you'll always see that in a particular chat, if you mention something, it will always respond similar to the context. For example, I have asked this in my previous session too. Do you know what citing is? How many of you know what citing is? No? Okay, some could say giving credit to the person that talked about it first, like, citing references from someone else's work. That is citing too. And one other citing is actually related to construction. There's a citing that goes on the house outer layer of the walls. So that is also called citing. I got to know that it's called citing because one of my friends was getting her house cited, and that's why I knew it was citing. But if we look and say, let's see what it says. What is citing? See, it just says what the broader perspective of the prompt is. Let's stay in the same chat and ask in context of houses. It still says the same, right? Giving references and something. Let's see. What is citing of houses in construction? Let's say just citing of houses. I'm not even giving it anything extra. It's still saying the same. I think I need to give it more context, but let me see how GPT behaves since that was. My first response is citing is practice of giving credit in context of, let's say, building. It still says the same. Let's say in context of construction of houses.
Just wondering if you're like sharing the other window.
Oh, my bad. Okay, give me 1 second. I just didn't realize that this is not working. Okay, I just opened ChatGPT and tried to prompt it the same since it was asking. I am a little over time. Is that okay? I think we only have a minute left.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Let's, nope, not this. Oh, it's asking me to log in. I don't really want to log in because once you log in, it changes the way um, it works. But let's try a new prompt here. What is citing in construction of houses? I don't know. It's still thinking on the same thing, but if I give it more context on citing, and usually ChatGPT differs it better, um, why it is responding in this way? Because Gemini just doesn't have enough background on construction terms. Like, when Gemini was trained or the model 2.0 Flash was trained, it didn't see enough materials on citing, what citing exactly is. Um, so, oh, there is I think there's also a spelling change. There you go. But usually when we don't know what we are really talking about, if we give it more context on this citing, whatever we know, it's able to give us more on those terms. And for it to be really knowing that, as I said, it has to see data related to that. And one other question was with remembering prompts and answers, when you, I'm just going to close that. Um, when you stay in the same chat, it knows what its previous response was, such as in Gemini, when we tried to refine its output from giving us the count of numbers, it still was not really able to think in the same way. But when we started a new chat and tried to give it the chain of thought prompting, it acted much better as compared to the previous one. So if you stay in the same chat, the history is always preserved in that chat. It's similar to, like, talking with your friends. If you have two friends named the same thing, I have two friends who were named Lily. If I'm talking to one Lily about my dress and the second Lily about food, they will individually know the context of what I'm talking. But if I exchange those chats, both of them will not know what the context is. So does that reference really help? Okay. That's it I had from my end. And as I'm saying, these are no way the norms that are like fixed, that you should only do these to work better. As I said in my earlier slides too, it's about being clear and very precise with your prompting that will help you come up with answers. And no prompting is right or wrong. Everything you're doing is to get a better answer. That's it. So thank you very much for taking the time and giving me the opportunity to speak. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope I was able to help you in some or the other way.
Yeah, thanks, Kirti. That was fun, and I personally learned a lot, and I'm sure like all the participants here learned a lot as well. I think we could maybe have 10 seconds for one last question. If
Yeah.
not, we could end the call here, and just gonna wait
Okay.
for 10 seconds, and then I'm also gonna see Vanya if you have something to add.
Yeah, we need to, for the last question, and then we need to invite for tomorrow's session with Nas. But let's go ahead with the last question from the audience, please.
Okay. If there is nothing, and if someone really wants to connect, is it okay if I drop my LinkedIn in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, there you go. I dropped my LinkedIn in chat. So, yeah, it was really great talking here. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Please give a strong clap to Keerti for this great session. Yay! Thank you so much, Keerti, for sharing your expertise in prompt engineering and how to tame these large language models. Well, just before wrapping up, I just want to invite you for tomorrow's session with Nazarene Oshi, Code Smarter, Not Harder, How to Build AI-Driven Apps with Gemini. Tomorrow, the session will be at 1 p.m. 1 moment. Here is the QR code, so you can RSVP for this session. And also, I want to make you a last reminder for Saturday's workshop at Edmonton Unlimited of beginner blockchain workshop with Elio, with my friend Kim Wu at 12:30. There will be she will give an introductory workshop about Elio. In our hackathon, there's going to be a privacy track where you need to develop something, a feature for your projects with Elio, and this session will be very helpful for you to develop your projects. And yeah, and there is a QR code, so you can RSVP to that event. And that's all. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Rohan. Thanks, Keerti.
I'm really
See you,
glad. Thank you for
everyone.
inviting. See you sometime soon.
Thank you, Kirti. Thanks, Vanya.
Bye.
See you. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.